Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Another Monday. And Edwin and friend. Hello, Edwin.
Yeah. Well, it's Edwin and Dusty. She's been a little bit clingy lately, Martin. I don't know why. I think she's maybe getting ready for the summer. She's been taking it easy over the lockdowns and now back to work, and she's not really liking it much.
Well, cats, of course, have their own agenda, as you will, of course, know. But I reckon that they have quite a good sense about what's going on.
Yeah, look, it has been a little bit of a slow week. We're back well and truly looking at inspecting homes and apartments. I've got a couple of clients that are looking at specifically at apartments, and it's been rather interesting talking to the neighbours of in the complexes and the people that actually live in these complexes, and as well as the general chatter on the big wide world of the property market, how the sentiment seems to be changing a little bit with the selling agents. And it's going to be interesting moving forward what the conversations are going to be with their vendors. We're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But other than that, it's been a little bit slow. I don't know about your end or how you're feeling the general mood down in the great southern part of New South Wales.
Well, actually, it's been remarkably busy here. I've had a lot of people reach for me with regard to one-on-ones because they're trying to decode what's going on with the property market, right? I don't know whether you saw, but one of the, I won't mention him, but one of the very positive property spruikers who has a YouTube channel and sends a lot of emails out to people actually came out and said, don't buy apartments close to the centres of cities in Sydney and Melbourne. So that's an interesting diversion. And, a lot of people that I'm speaking with have got stuck with these apartments that they bought a few years ago, and it's just not working for them. So it's a real interesting question now with all the listings rising, and we'll touch on that a bit later. Do you now list and try and get out, or do you hold on, or what's it going to go? And it's interesting that the banks have come out basically saying, well, this prices will be high this year, but next year, most banks are saying, we don't expect price growth to be anything like it was this year. So, it's all over the place.
Well, it is, Martin, and obviously, apart from the normal economic indicators that you and Tarek look at on a week-by-week basis, there's a lot of other things that are thrown into the mix, such as what's on everybody's lips at the moment. The vaccine mandates, what's going to happen with ongoing with these mandates, and how things are going to pan out, particularly in places like Victoria. I mean, they're talking about stretching things out till 2023 for the so-called unvaccinated, and it's becoming a real utopian society two classes of people, two groups of people being separated. The question is going to be, obviously, from a property arena point of view, is are people going to be moving north, coming north to New South Wales, or even going all the way to Queensland, and how much more young families is Victoria prepared to lose, or are they going to lose moving forward? Because that obviously does have an impact on property prices, on the general dynamics, apart from as you and Tarek been talking about, in terms of the economic indicators as to how many jobs are going to really be there. We're talking about coming out of lockdowns, but the real question that a lot of people don't talk about is how many hours are people going to lose? What jobs are going to be lost altogether? What businesses are really going to come back? Which businesses are going to be secure in the future with all this uncertainty? So all these other things that are being thrown into this conundrum, or this bowl of spaghetti, it's just becoming more and more interesting by the day. More of the reason why people have to be very cautious, have to be very more aware of what they're going to do, how they're going to, where they're going to place their money, particularly if it's a principal place of residence, and what they're going to buy. Then further afield, we've got this standstill with China at the moment, with this policy that's going to be voted on the 8th of November. So that is going to be interesting. So forget Evergrande and everything else. At the moment, the WeChat chatterers are sitting on the sideline waiting to see what Xi's going to do on the 8th. I mean, which directions are going to take? So all these things have been thrown into the mix. So it is a call it a bowl of spaghetti, Martin. It's just, stuff everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on the China thing, of course, this could almost be the third revolution, couldn't it?
Well, it is. We had the first. The first historical policy change was when Mao ruled, and he got rid of Wang's policy. Then after that, we got Dan come in, and he took over Mao's policy. And now what's going to, the interesting thing is what's going to move forward. And the last policy change was really with the Cultural Revolution. So it's going to see interesting to see what Xi's going to do. As I've been saying, and the WeChat chatterers have been alluding to over the last few months and a bit longer, it's for the way they're looking at it is a total decoupling of China from the Western from the Western markets, from the West. And have been doing so, and things are pointing more and more into that direction. And obviously, with regards to I have been asking them questions with regards to Evergrande and all the building or the housing issues that they're facing, that they're going through, and what the mainstream media in the Western world is propagating and talking about. They don't really care, because at the end of the day, whatever Xi does is really going to be moving more towards a uniform standard of living across the board, because that's what he believes in. He believes in sharing and so forth. So the question is going to be: are the rich going to be brought down a peg or two to make room for to bring the poor up to closer to the middle class? I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting, and obviously that's going to be the bigger effect on our property market here in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think again, your point is dead right. The Evergrande thing is not being fully understood. Right, it's being seen as a standalone event. It's not. It's part of a bigger mega trend. Some of it's to do with property, but partly that's been driven by the red lines that Xi's put up, right? Because basically he doesn't believe necessarily that the way that things have been done in recent times is just and right.
Well, that's correct, and this is where a lot of people and a lot of the pundits focus on Evergrande and what's happening now. But the thing is that there was a huge correction with property prices in China when Xi's policy, when he put a policy in place with regards to the teachers in the prestigious schools, where he basically said to them, right, you're going to do 3 months in this school, then you're going to move on to another school, and you're going to move on to another school further out, and basically the teachers are moving around. So there's no such thing now as prestigious educational institutions or schools or tertiary education or secondary or tertiary education, because the policy has been for a while now for the teachers and the professors and the lecturers to move around. So that took away that sense of, I want to live in this precinct or in this region or in this call it a suburb because of and buy a property here so that my children can go to this particular school. Because if you don't live in a certain area, you literally can't go there. It's wherever you own a property or wherever you were born that you go to school at. So all these things have already been unraveling, and that already brought down the value of properties months ago. So this Evergrande is really, the way they're looking at it, it's really not as much of a big deal as the West is making it out to be. Yes, it's going to affect us because there's a lot of institutions and a lot of our institutions or American institutions and Australian institutions have invested with retirees funds and so forth, and super funds, and they're going to be in the proverbial caca. So it's going to affect that way. I see the effect more happening with regards to the people that invested in the share market there in China. Typically the makeup of people that would have punted and invested in our markets with off-the-plan purchases, and now they're holding on to dead weights here. So for me, it's going to be more of an interesting factor as to what they're going to do, what these pundits are going to do when they lose a lot over in China, and are they going to offload their holdings here? So I think a lot of it's going to be determined after the 8th of November.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep watching and listening to the wee chatters, and we'll report what's going on. And talking about things that are going on, that listing count's gone through the roof.
Well, it has. We're still 2,000 short in terms of listings for freestanding homes to what we saw in the peak of 2020. Obviously just on a year on year figures, but we're climbing. But it's interesting how the sentiment is changing and the perception, even the mainstream media. It's been somewhat slow. There have been one or two articles that I read about homes that were totally infested with termites, how they went for 3.7 million or something like that, some crazy numbers. But then again, it's not as many as what we've seen in the past. So the question is the mood changing? And it's fascinating how the mood is changing regardless of the fact that we're still short on 2020's numbers. And the move it's only been about a 25-27% rise in listings from the bottom that we saw in early August. So it's rather interesting. So another 1,000 or even 2,000 to match 2020's numbers. It's almost, you could almost say it's going to be devastating for the selling agents and vendors. But I think it's only going to be a window of perhaps a window of 8 to 12 weeks, and it will all dependent on the international borders opening up, not for students or for tourists or for a student accommodation and people coming in to want to buy, but more so for the people that we've been talking about, that our WeChat chatters have told us for a long time now about the PR visa holders that have been sitting and waiting to be allowed into the new place of residence, and it's these people that I'm looking at, or that we're looking at, apart from expats that have been contacting us and other buyers agencies to search for properties for them. So it's not so much the students or the workers that are going to be coming in, as much as it is the people that already hold the PR visas and that are basically coming in for to set up base long term.
And there is some evidence of some prices in some areas coming off, right? There's that Twitter that you've shared recently where they said, well, look, prices have actually slid a bit. And I'm getting a few more stories like that now. So maybe in some areas we are off the peak.
Well, that's correct. And this is where the dialogue is changing with the agents that we talk to, and that we obviously been talking to and been focusing on particular properties for our clients. And in the last week and a half, we've had 3 price reductions. So when I put that up on Twitter as a general comment, a lot of other people are chiming in as to what they're experiencing around Sydney and obviously in a couple in Queensland as well. So it's rather interesting how the narrative is changing, how the general speak is changing, and some of these price reductions, Martin. One that I can share of in Blacktown was the vendor's expectation was $1,080,000, and now the vendor's expectation is $930,000 after a long discussion with myself and the selling agent, and him relaying what I identified in the property and the issues there. And the agents got back to me and said, look, if you're prepared to make an offer, if your client's prepared to make an offer, we'll consider around that, around that price point. I'd still think it's a little bit high, but obviously we're still working on it, and we're still trying to get even a further price reduction. But the chat, the chatter with the selling agents is certainly changing. So the sentiment is changing, and it's going to be interesting moving forward as to what they convey to their vendors. There are some areas where they've still had a good turnout for the open home inspections, but mostly we're seeing a huge drop in numbers from the comments and obviously the people that we deal with.
Absolutely. Well, I'm getting the same. So I'm hearing it exactly the same story, that the long queues that were there previously are now shorter, and price guides are getting a little bit less strong, and settlements seem to be, you made the point the other day about how people were beginning to settle prior to the auction, right? Well, that's definitely been playing out down here as well. So quite interesting just seeing that come through. Now, you mentioned Queensland, and there was an article in The Age basically saying, well, there's some lockdown news, of course, from Victoria, but nevertheless, is it enough to stop people moving up to Queensland? I think it's a good question.
Look, it's with what's been coming out from the government pulpit, and from the government there. Look, I've got to look at, we look at these things, the whole team, we look at these things and we analyse these stories very, very carefully, because obviously it's going to have an impact on young families. And young families or families are going to invest in the livelihood of their kids. And so when you start considering how these young families or small families are going to be cooped up, particularly if they sit on the camp of not wanting to be vaccinated, they're going to be sitting in that camp. It's still a lot of people, and it's still a lot of groups of people, and they're all also going to be people that they're going to be vaxxed, but they're also going to take the side of as to the government's anti-government's position with regards to all this, and they're going to be fed up as to how the whole state's been governed, and we feel that there's going to be a continued migration of moving north. New South Wales, I see it, and as I've chatted with quite a number of people, I see New South Wales as people from Victoria coming up to New South Wales and coming down from Queensland because of perhaps a greater security of income in terms of work and business. But from an affordability point of view, obviously Queensland still trumps New South Wales because of the price points and the climate. So, but definitely, I think that people are going to be taking these policies, government policies. They're going to be, thinking long and hard over this coming break. And I get the feeling that the migration, people are just going to be migrating north. More people are going to be migrating north than willing to go and live in Victoria.
Well, we saw in the earlier ABS stats that there was actually net migration away from Victoria, as indeed Sydney too, and it was all going up to Queensland. And not only, of course, are property prices, much less expensive up in Queensland, and yields on investment properties are better, but they've got a different track record with regard to COVID. So, and the weather on the whole, most of the year is probably better up there than it is down in Victoria.
Well, that's correct. And look, people are going to invest in their families, in the young families, whether it be from a rental point of view as well. They're going to look at Queensland as going to be a little bit more attractive than New South Wales, and more also to the point of from a purchase power. Obviously they're going to get more bang for their buck in Queensland, but they're going to be making these decisions. They're not easy decisions, they're hard decisions, but I think the government's facilitating for this migration to continue going north. So because it's going into this draconian measures right up to 2023, Martin, it makes you sort of, doesn't even incentivize me to go down and visit.
Well, no, it goes back to the old question as to sometimes governments can overreach and can effectively become too dictatorial for too long. And I'm certainly speaking to a number of people down in Victoria. They feel as though that fuse is well lit. We'll see what happens. And talking of fuses that are lit, we've had a big boom talking about the defects on particularly high-rise in New South Wales, but it looks as though that same boom is now beginning to spread to Victoria and other places too.
And so it should, because there's been a lot of BS that's happened around Queensland with regards to building and construction. I've got a whole drive full of photos, images, videos of some of our followers that have sent me of people that follow us that are in the construction industry up in Queensland and particularly in the Gold Coast, and these defective buildings there. They've sent them through. A current affairs a few years ago, we're going to do an expose on a particular building in the Gold Coast, and then from one day to the next day, it was shut down. And I've got the video footage of that building and photo images of that building, and it's absolutely flabbergasting what they do. So it's about time, and they've tried to control this. Control the investigations into the defective construction standards or construction and the way the standards have waned over the years, more so in Queensland. But guess what? There's the people are rallying together and they're speaking out and they're speaking up, and we're going to hear more and more stories about the effective building practices in Queensland and also in Victoria. So we're not going to stand alone anymore, Martin. We're not going to stand alone.
Well, it is interesting. And, you and I have both said over the last few months that defective construction is not just the bailiwick of New South Wales or Sydney, right? Pretty much wherever you look, you see the same sorts of things going on. Poor quality construction, lack of supervision, lack of certification, poor quality materials. And it's worth remembering, of course, that it doesn't just hit on day one, right? I mean, you get a property, and even if it looks nice and shiny and finished on day one, it takes a little while for things to settle down and wear in. And quite often what I'm seeing from my conversations with people is that the defects start to appear, perhaps in the first 2 to 3 to 4 years, and suddenly then you get this acceleration, and then the owner's corporation starts to panic, and then they put the fees up, and it gets messy.
Yeah, it does. It gets messy, but again, it comes back down to the parties that are involved at the beginning, or the handover of the building and the strata management, the management of the of the unit holders to the strata manager, and it all and it's usually brown paper bag deals here and there, and nothing gets reported according to the regulations, and the owners corporations and the individual lot owners miss out on a lot. So it's a mess, but we don't stand alone, and it's certainly going to be more explosive, and more people are going to shy away from these builders, particularly the ones that have just surfaced, that have come to the surface, or it's their first project, or even may even be the third project, but they haven't had a real long track record with regards to construction. As you and I have spoken about many times, always go back to what they've built, and go and check those apartments, those complexes out before you sink your teeth into an off the plan purchase, or something that's about to be finished, or something that's just that's a year or two old. As you say, buildings take 2 to 3 years to settle. So and it's in that settlement stage that we're going to end up with seeing all the defects and all the issues. But unfortunately, the legislation dictates that the owners corporation, by way of the strata manager, has to fulfil certain duties within a certain period of time, and if they don't do that, obviously there's all sorts of statute of limitations with regards to claims against the builder, claims against the developer, and it's these strata managers or management companies that obviously aren't going to bite the hand that feeds them, particularly when you know that some of these complexes, the strata management, as a business, as a business revenue or as a value, it's worth anything from $100,000 to $150,000 per year.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed you went back to brown paper bags rather than Aldi bags. Is that significant?
Well, we're not as advanced as the politicians in the construction industry.
Oh, very well. I see. Yeah. But, you know that there's a lot goes on below the waterline, right? And unfortunately, those owners end up holding, the damp end of the stick so many times. And what I've also found quite interesting as I've spoken to a number of people through my one-on-one conversations is how complex this whole thing becomes, because it's not clear about who's accountable for what. The liability paths are very, very, very complex. And then the owner's corporation sometimes seems to almost fall over backwards not to do the right thing. Now, it does get very difficult and very time consuming and very costly. And almost always, the owner of the property never thought that they'd get into the mess that they're in, right? And they may have done some due diligence, or they may not have done due diligence on the way in. But as you and I have said on several occasions, Edwin, you've got to do the right questioning on the way in, because otherwise you can get caught.
Very much so. And this is where a lot of and here's something else that we can throw into that mix, Martin, and that is that in a lot of these complexes that have been built over the last 7 years, 7 to 10 years, the majority are owned by overseas investors. And they don't say a lot. They don't do a lot. So you've also got to be careful as to who the mix of the tenancies or the occupancy in a building project, and it's not easy to get that information. So it's not until you get the strata reports and you spend, which is worthwhile spend anyway. When you're spending, let's say, $1,500 overall by getting all the reports, with regards to, in comparison to spending upwards of $900 for a, 2-bedroom apartment to right up to $2 million, depending on what part of Sydney you're going to. So it's a worthwhile investment, and it's a very important element or key factor that you need to consider, because should anything happen, how is the strata manager going to chase owners overseas when they're not going to be paying their dues, their levies, or the special levies that are going to be raised, or the regular sinking fund and so forth. So it becomes messy, very, very messy.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we've covered it a few times. I'm sure we'll cover it again. But Brisbane, Melbourne, you're going down the same route.
Going down the same gurgler.
And talking of gurglers, there's a really big one here, right? High Rise Harry's got a new idea, right? There are all these spare office blocks around sitting in the centre of our major cities. Well, why don't we convert them into, guess what? More high-rise apartments.
More high-rise apartments, more apartments. There was a report that the state government or the federal government is providing to the state governments, another $180 million to for the state budgets for housing, for affordable housing and the like. And what are they going to do with that? Go and build more apartments. Saying, stop looking at apartments, stop looking at these monstrosities. People need a lifestyle. Apartments are not. They stop being a good place or a good environment for the young families in 2019. Once we got a hold of this pandemic and moving forward, it's even going to get more complicated, or it's even going to get more. People are going to be more concerned and more fearful as to living in these cooped up areas, and it's going to be another year or 2 or 3, and we're going to start hearing reports of of mental health issues with kids that have been cooped up in these apartments. And not only that, but also from a health perspective or a health point of view, a lot of these apartments, they don't function with good cross flow ventilation anymore that we used to get with previous builds, where we used to get good ventilation, natural ventilation. It's all mechanical, and mechanical that just meets the standards, but those standards are not adequate enough to cope with with dryers, cooking, showers, with laundry facilities, and everything in these shoe boxes, not bigger than 62, 65 square meters internal.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, talk about lifestyle. There's not much lifestyle about the lifestyle, right, in those high-rise. And, of course, the other factor to bear in mind is if you're a property investor looking at these high-rise, the rentals are still way down, particularly close into Sydney and Melbourne CBDs, hence my earlier conversation about one of the big spruikers saying don't touch them with a barge pole. Well, we've been saying that for quite some time. And generally, if you look at the rental returns in and around the major centres, the rental returns on the high-rise sector are just way off where they are with standalone houses, or indeed if you look at Queensland or Tasmania or even WA. So, it's worth people just being very cautious about this, because if they do end up with another big construction boom of converted offices as well to add to the oversupply of high-rise apartments that's already there and already in the works, that's going to put further downward pressure on the price of high-rise apartments, right? And it's interesting because you could argue, well, isn't that a good thing? Well, it may be a good thing, but on the other hand, just putting downward pressure on the high-rise sector, if the apartments themselves are actually not that well built and the lifestyle is pretty poor, what you end up doing is creating ghettos and forcing people into them. And that's not very Australian, in my view.
100%, man. You're on the money. You end up with the $1 million ghettos that I did a video on about 8, 9, perhaps even 10 years ago. And that was not in an apartment complex or 2 blocks up from Mascot Towers. And we were looking at things back then, and we called them the $1 million ghettos. I guess the only justice that we can do if we were to redo that video is call them now the $1 billion ghettos.
Price inflation's everywhere, Edwin. Price inflation's everywhere. and talking of everywhere, you made a really interesting comment a few weeks ago about being prepared, right? Because a lot of stuff ain't going to be available. Well, you said it before, pretty much anybody, and boy, is it coming true now, isn't it?
Oh, look, it is. It's and it's mainly because of our WeChat chatterers all over the world. They've been telling us. But look, again, the tip of the week for this week is going to be really recapping on that, and also because of, I guess, what I've been doing personally is preparing again for the next run of the renovations. So Dusty and Evan are on the phones, all day chasing quotes and chasing tradespeople and equipment. So get a hold of the white goods, because thank God that we were able to secure some of the equipment that we were going to be obviously replacing and adding to the studios, in particular air conditioning units. They've jumped up something like 30% since we acquired our units before. Now, and not only that, but also some steel for decking. If we're lucky to get our order in, otherwise it's going to be, as of next week, it's going to be a 14-week waiting period to get steel, and that's if the next party is going to get it. So it's basically said we may not have anything for 14 weeks, or it may be longer. So with regards to building materials, I'd say if you're going to do something, or with white goods or electrical goods for your house, get out there, get on the blower and start chasing it down and putting your deposits in and taking delivery of it as soon as you can. The other thing, I guess, also, Martin, is what we spoke about before I went into surgery was with regards to health and how we saw that being important and how things were going to pan out. And look at what happened. Thank God I was able to sneak in. My specialist was able to sneak me in before the proverbial hit the fan, and things got harder and tighter and more restrictions as to who they would attend to and who they wouldn't attend to and so forth. But I guess on that note, from a health point of view, what we've been hearing and what from our WeChat chatterers, predominantly in China, is the base materials for a lot of our medicines and our medical kits here in Australia aren't going to be forthcoming. So I would say, prepare your home first aid kits. Get those ready. Add to them. Double up if you can. If you got some spare room in your place, whether it's in the garage or in your or get a shed if you got space for a shed, or if you got some spare space, build a storage facility to stock up on some of these things, because it's not so much that. And also some foods, Martin, as we've been saying, it's not so much that we don't grow, that we don't farm, that we don't have livestock or any other type of meat or poultry, so forth. That's not so much the point as it is the packaging, the wrapping, the cans and the bottles and everything that these goods go into in order to get delivered to the shops. So it's going to be a lot of our viewers have probably seen what's happening in America and the empty shelves over in America. Look, we may not get as bad as that, but who's to say? And it doesn't hurt to prepare.
No, I agree. Well, I'll tell you a little war story of my own, because I've just been rebuilding some of the studio here, specifically upgrading the audio system. And so I went to my major supplier to get some things called XLR plugs. They're the audio plugs, very bog standard things, right? And they were on the website, so I put an order in and everything was fine, right? And then over the weekend I got a message saying, well, those things you ordered, the back order date is now 26th of March next year.
Wow.
I'm like, well, hey, how did that happen? Now, luckily, I was able to source them from an alternative supplier who also had a few left. But that alternative supplier also said to me, they're running really short. And yep, next year, March or so, is when they go. So, folks, if you're doing any audio work, get hold of those XLR plugs now, because they'll be unavailable quite soon.
Well, electronic goods and accessories for mobile phones. You'd be surprised what the things that we use regularly that we just been taking for granted. I had to go to Bunnings today to pick up some material, as I'm helping my son with his renovation and organising the trades there, and so we had to go and get some special fixing screws called bugles and some other type of other equipment, and I was absolutely flabbergasted, gobsmacked with how bare the shelves in this Bunnings stores were, Martin. And it's we're talking. And it's we take so much we've been taking so much for granted, and it's only going to be a matter of time. So it doesn't hurt. And I know some people may call us what do they call it? Not hoarders. What's the other word
Preppers.
For preppers? But there's a more of a derogatory term that they use, that we go out and and prepare for storage. I mean, I recall when we first came to Australia, my parents used to go to Flemington markets. We lived in Gladesville, and my parents and my uncles and my aunties, they used to go to Flemington markets and come back with, they used to buy half a carcass, and they used to split it amongst the families, and used to buy all sorts of food and boxes of tomatoes and bottle it all up and store it. And there was enough food sitting underneath the staircase for weeks, or all the preservatives, and nobody does that now. It's basically let's ring up for a pizza, or let's get in the car and go take away. A lot of that's going to get, I feel it's going to get very scarce, and it's going to be hard to do because, again, not because we don't grow it, not because we don't produce it, not because we don't farm it, but because transportation is going to be more of an issue. Packaging is going to be a greater issue. Picking and putting all these things together, maybe an issue, but for sure, the base materials to do all this will be an issue. It's not maybe, it will be, because we already know that the base materials aren't coming in, and China aren't looking at us favorably. We haven't been for months. And therefore, if they're going to supply anybody, they'll supply people in other parts of the world, and they'll give us the dregs.
Well, and the point is, Edwin, that what we're talking about here is this just an example, right, of what's going on around the world, right? This isn't just a local issue for Australia. This is part of the global disruption of the supply chains, and explains why inflation is probably a lot stronger and why prices are going up and why people are getting disrupted, because there's this cascading effect. Every time you can't get something, then somebody else can't do something. It triggers a cascade. And that's what I'm interested in at the moment, just how far and reaching these supply chain shortages are going to be, and how hard they are to fix. So, for example, Biden has basically said, well, we'll make our ports run 24/7, right? Except the ports in the US are not run by the government. The ports are actually run by local firms who don't have to follow that rule, right? And they are reliant on people working a certain number of hours and things. So even when Biden says we're going to keep the ports open, it doesn't mean they're going to necessarily be able to process stuff through the whole of the time. And then they need drivers to move all the stuff around. And so again, you can see how this all cascades on and creates more issues.
Well, that's great. And then you've got obviously the rising fuel prices over there, where it's just going absolutely through the roof, and you got all these issues. But these issues are coming home to roost on our shores as well. And this is why we look at them, apart from our own personal interests, and to see which way we're going to go and what we're going to be doing with our assets and with our lifestyles and so forth. But also, more importantly, to see and to try and to help us to navigate through property prices and look at what people are going to be looking for and what's going to be obviously have a greater value. And hence the reason why when you look more and more at apartments, you look at it and you sort of think, shit, they're only 62 square meters internal. Unless where do you store stuff? Where do you put stuff? Some of these kitchens in some of these apartments, these 2-bedroom apartments that are, no bigger than 70 square meters internal, they're just gully kitchens. You've got 3 cupboards on top of the stove and the sink, and that's it. That's your storage. So unless you're going to start storing things underneath your bed, where else can you put? Where else can you accommodate for the extra freezer or fridge or just to store cans of goods or anything else? So it's hence the reason why the appetite for property has been greater and greater for freestanding homes has been greater and greater. And the people that are coming over from overseas that are on holders of this PR permanent residency visas, they're not coming over to buy our apartments, and they're coming over. They are high net worth individuals. When I say high net, they're educated people, predominantly going to be working in the IT, accounting, and more so in the medical sector. And they're prepared to travel. So their appetite isn't for apartments. Their appetite is for freestanding homes. So, but it's a wait and see. So that's why we look at all these things. It's not because we're full on preppers or this or that. We have to look at it because everything plays a role now with regards to what people are going to do. Trying to gauge and to assist people, and also when we talk to to people that are contracting us to help them and assist them with buying, we look at the short-term plan, the long-term, medium-term, and long-term plan, and see what they're looking for and what they're after to assist them, to better assist them to get into the market, and more so the first-home buyers.
Absolutely. Well, while you were talking, and pardon to Evan and Dusty, but those apartments, there's not enough room to swing a cat, is there?
No, they don't like to be swung around, Martin. You can swing your dogs. They just told me you can swing your dogs. They're not going to be swung around.
Yeah,
you can hardly swing. You can hardly swing a lizard in the apartments, let alone a cat.
Exactly right. Exactly.
But people look, and again, these are things like High Rise Harry talking about converting these commercial or complexes to office complexes to residential, and people talk about, but you can have the facilities, you can add the facilities, you can add the pools, and you can do this, and you can do that, and you can have your gyms and do this and do that and all this. But it all adds to the cost. There's the ongoing cost as well of the common areas and the strata levies, and it gets to a point where you're living in a one bedroom, let's say, apartment. If you're a single individual, you might, or just a couple, and you could have all these facilities. But when you start paying $3,500 a quarter for strata levies on top of, and that's not that's after tax. It's not like the taxman's going to help you pay that, because you're obviously, if it's your principal place of residence and you live there. It's the costs are insane to keep these facilities. So again, the more you look into apartments, regardless of what they throw at you, it's got to be really attractive by way of a price point, and you really got to want can't afford anything else. Or there's got to be a really good reason for you to buy into one to do so.
Absolutely. Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, a professional lady, who bought a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, actually. And the reason that it was attractive to her 2 or 3 years ago was because it had the pool and it had all of the gym and everything else, right? And then what happened? COVID came along, and of course they shut all those common areas. But there was no reduction to the strata levies, right? Despite the fact that for the last 18 months or so, she's not been able to access it. So it just shows you that, what might look as superficially attractive can quite often turn to porridge quite quickly. I hope we don't get into the COVID, but the point is it's worth thinking all this through, right? So, and that's why more people are looking other than high rise and looking for that extra space and the lifestyle, and I think we're going to see that continuing.
Yeah, that's correct. And like on that, with the costs of if you're looking at it as an investment, the ongoing costs that just chip away and eat away as to your net return. And you end up with less, and more has to come out of your pocket. So you better make sure you've got plenty there to offset against your tax, and to negatively gear and all that sort of rubbish that goes on that side of things. And another one that's going to suffer, I believe, and I feel long term moving forward, is the short term lets, the Airbnb, because people are going to be demanding that the short-term rental accommodations are going to not only be cleaned after each occupant, but they're also going to be asking for to be sterilized or disinfected, or so that's an added cost on top of everything else and all the other regulations that are coming on. So these things are from an investment point of view, these things also play a big role moving forward as to what the states legislate and demand of you as a property owner and as a landlord and as a short-term lease mogul, or whatever you want to call yourself, if you think that more tourists are going to come and you're going to be able to make the money that you were able to make before 2020. I think people are going to take a hard look at the added costs that are going to be more at the forefront moving forward.
Yeah, I agree, Edwin. As always, we say cautious is the name of the watchword here. Don't do anything too quick. Make sure you've done all the thinking and think about all these things, because it's much harder to try and extract yourself subsequently if you make a wrong decision. And at the moment, I think people are still risking making rather bad decisions. So they should continue to listen to us. hopefully we can shed a bit of light and help people make better decisions. Edwin, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, and we'll do it all again soon.
Definitely, Martin, and looking forward to next Monday. Hopefully, this week's going to be a little bit more exciting, and I'm hoping to hear or to read a few articles on as to the new chatter or the new the new feel or the heat coming off the property market. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Well, we'll see. See you next week, Edwin. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah.